Mike and Arlene Nalen. And I want that part of my presentation clear to you. I hope you won't miss any part of the important parts of this, and you will know and have an opportunity to hear more about the very, very important people that provide the heartbeat of Deep Portage operation. Every one of our social structures, like your church, your schools, businesses, always has somebody or a couple that provides the heartbeat. While this organization has been in effect for since Mike and Arlene came here, I think in 1976, Mike, they have provided the heartbeat, and particularly during this long trial, the hard work that so many people have contributed their skills, their efforts, their direction from the commissioners, from the Board of Governors. While all of that has been taking place, Mike and Arlene have provided the heartbeat. And for those of you who don't know that story as well as some of the rest of us do, let me tell you about these two wonderful people. Let me tell you a little bit more about what they have done, and let me tell you particularly about the skills that they have brought to Deep Portage, and the effort and the personal gifting that is so unique, not so much in terms of tangible things that the fundraisers are working so hard on, but they are unique in having given so much of themselves. So let me tell you about them and pinpoint some of the ways that have led them to be the heartbeat of Deep Portage. We can start with Mike. And the information sheet is 3 pages long, and from one who is used to dealing with professional people, it's very, very impressive. Time doesn't allow me to give all of it to you, but let me tell you a little bit, just a little bit, about Mike Nalen. Mike Nalen graduated with a Bachelor in Science and Education from Mankato State College in 1961. His majors were biology, Spanish, and chemistry. He did graduate work at several other universities before he received a master's degree in biology from the University of Northern Iowa in 1967. The list of professional experience, let me go back. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong sheet in my hand, but I'm not going to go back and get the other sheet. I know this subject well enough, but I will get back to it. In his master's degree in biology, I want to read to you the title of his thesis. The title is The Propylene Oxide Sterilization of Heterogeneous and Homogeneous Populations of Bacteria. Now, that's pretty good for starters. He wasn't quite satisfied that that covered the subject all the way, so he came further and co-authored an additional article on that same subject, namely propylene oxide sterilization of media containing bacterial populations. Mike, in the interest of time of the senator, I'd be glad to step aside for a moment if that would be appropriate to what we are doing.
I think so. Senator Nurnberger is on a very tight schedule, so we can turn it back to Ted and Senator Nurnberger.
Thank you. My name's Ted Lundrigan. I'm from Pine River, Minnesota. I've been involved with the foundation for about 12 years. I'm an attorney in Pine River, Minnesota, along with my dad. And, you know, when you look around here, you do get a little over enthusiastic. I know I do, and when that happens, I'm kind of given to exaggeration. And I met Senator Dernberger outside there, and I said to him, I hope that this day at Deep Portage would be the most memorable event of his entire life. And he showed me that he was a true senator, because he thought about that for a moment, and a minute or two later he came back and he said, Ted, he said, you know, when I married my wife, I thought that that marriage to Penny would be the greatest moment of my entire life. And he said that when my children were born, Charlie and David, Michael and Daniel, each event then I thought would be the greatest moment of my entire life. And I thought when I was elected senator that was the greatest moment of my entire life. However, he said, looking around here today, this will be the greatest moment of my entire life.
Well, it's great fun to be here, and I know you're all enjoying yourselves. Nobody really looked forward to a politician speaking, but it said he's going to be here. Gordy invited him, so he had to come. So we're going to have to listen to him. But before you have to listen to the politician speak, we have this. Might be one of the greatest moments of our lives. They all look like they know what they're doing. I recognize all the instruments. In order to get us into the appropriate spirit for what we are doing here today, and the dedication of this wonderful piece of work, we, I am informed, are going to begin with our national anthem. So if you'd all stand. Talented. That's a new rendition of the national anthem, but it was quite good. If I knew where they were all from, I'd tell you where they were all from. Maybe you already know, and we'd give them appropriate recognition. Well, while I wait for my speech to go through the Xerox machine, oh, maybe you will be spared a formal speech. I came with one, and they said, "Do you happen to have a copy of your speech?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Can we have it?" And I said, "Sure." And they have a non-speech. Meanwhile, as I look around, it looks like I'm supposed to wear my tie. He's got a tie. I think I will do without my tie, if you don't mind. But, well, we're here to celebrate today, and each time I come here, there is something new to celebrate, but I can't do it without recognizing the fact that it is not the physical facility we celebrate, and it isn't even all of the 300 people that come together here. There's always some geniuses or some inspirations behind all of this, and you know who they are. And for me, the connection has been Gordy, because I used to go to Boone and Erickson all the time because they were funny, and Then I went because I was in politics and I had to go, and then they made me sound funny. Like once they claimed I was arrested for disorderly conduct in Boston, and you know, they do all these crazy things on me. But every time I went to WCCO, there would be Gordy, and he'd say, "When are you coming to Deep Portage? When are you coming to Deep Portage again?" I said, "Well, I was just there last week, you know, or last month, or last year, or whatever. When are you coming?" And we got something new, always something new. And I guess, as I think back over my lifetime now, or at least that part of my adult lifetime that I have committed to natural resource conservation, preservation, and then just sharing it in an educational sense, I always relate to people. If somebody got me into this, somebody taught me that, somebody opened my eyes to this. I mean, this is, and I connect everything through somebody rather than through something. And yet when we think about conservation, we always think about one of the non-human creations that the good Lord has blessed us with, that it becomes our responsibility as humans to exercise some stewardship over. So I just begin my remarks. Is the Xerox machine working? Broken down? I begin my, the heck with it. I knew what I was going to say anyway. I begin my remarks simply by reminding each of us that it's important that we're here. And for whatever piece of this each of you may represent, okay, thank you very much. Now what I should do is go rip like that, and everybody would really cheer. Problem is, if you don't use a text, you talk forever. But the fact that we come together to celebrate some new part of Deep Portage ought to be the celebration that of man's stewardship, man's stewardship, and a very important responsibility that each of us takes on when we are placed here on Earth. First, the responsibility, obviously, which puts us here in the first place, which is to take ourselves and develop it, and then to develop it through other people, our relationships with other people, and then ultimately the expansion of our notion of what life is really all about. Beyond the human life, there are these larger rewards, and all of this ties together. But in that process, there is around all of us here, whether we're the township supervisors or the county commissioners or the private investors, the public investors, the politicians of one kind or another, and just the folks that have committed their lives, there is something extra special about the commitment that we make to our service to stewardship, which comes through the land and the preservation of the land. My remarks today are designed to cover, I'm supposed to talk about Minnesota resources and things like that, and I'd really like to put it in the context of stewardship, because we're doing such a lousy job in general, my generation is, at least with stewardship. Right now, the United States Senate is still in session, and I am here. Fortunately, there are about 20 some other folks, senators, who aren't there also, but we're voting on a trade bill. We're voting on the trade bill because we can't come to grips with a larger problem, which is the deficit. And the deficit is a $2.3 trillion gap between our desires to have as a society and our willingness to pay for it. And that's, in your jargon, that's called you can't balance the budget, or you don't know how to balance the budget, and it's that deficit. But there are other deficits, too, that represents. I just came from stopped in Morrison County in Little Falls, and I was talking to a county commissioner about the nitrates in the water, and now they've got atrazine that they've detected already in the city's water supply. And I said, yeah, well, I introduced a bill 2 days ago, and the groundwater safety bill, which is designed to deal with pesticides in groundwater. But why, after you find the atrazine in the city's water supply, and after the farmers of Morrison County are concerned about nitrates in the water, why after that does some politician come along with his groundwater safety bill and now we're going to cure the problem? It's all around us. How about acid rain? We're going to start markup on Monday and Tuesday on this year's version of an acid rain bill as part of the Clean Air Act. And I met with Lee Thomas yesterday, and he said, I hope you understand the difference between the George Mitchell, Bob Byrd, et cetera, vision of acid rain, and the one that you people are working on? I said, yes, we're working on an 8 to 10 million ton per year reduction, and he's working on a 12. And he said, well, you understand what that distinction is? And I said, yes. Theirs is the high cost, high sulfur version of the bill. And the very simple reason why they want to take 12 million tons per year of sulfur dioxide out of the air is not to make the air that much cleaner, but because that extra 2 million tons is so hard to get that we're going to have to put scrubbers in every single power plant in America probably to get it, and that means we're going to have to, as long as you're doing that, you might as well use high sulfur coal. So behind the dying lakes and the threats to the forests and everything in Europe that's coming to the United States and the acid rain are a bunch of politicians worried about whether or not, you know, they can sell their high sulfur coal. And so, well, I could go on and on. There's a deficit there in our thinking about our responsibility towards the world around us. I am an expert, let me talk about another deficit. I have become sort of an expert in national health policy. And I'm the father of DRGs and all that sort of thing, and putting small hospitals, they say, out of business and all that sort of thing. Nobody likes DRGs. I can't go to the hospital anymore. They discharged me earlier and all that sort of thing. And I keep trying to explain to people that we're not up to getting rid of doctors and hospitals and things like that. We're trying to get back to some basic values. The values like living within your means and taking responsibility for your actions, because I am part of a generation which has grown up believing that it can smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day and be entitled to an artificial heart or an artificial lung. I am part of a generation that believes that it is entitled not to have to wear a seatbelt or a helmet if you ride a motorcycle. And we believe that. I had a politician in southern Minnesota some time ago complained to me about the seatbelt law, and when I asked him what it was, and he said, well, he says, they got a deal now where if you have an accident with your car and your seatbelt isn't buckled, your insurance rates go up. And I said, yeah. What's wrong with that? And he said, well, you know how tough it is out here in rural Minnesota. We can't afford to do that. And, you know, he believed that his problem was his insurance rates, not his unwillingness to buckle his seatbelt. But gee, there's a lot of people like that. Some people in this room probably. I know some of you didn't smile. There's a deficit in the relationship between what I have a right to do and what I expect you to pick up of your share of the consequences of my action. When health insurance only costs $25 a month or $20 a month or something like that, and that would pay you for a doctor, a hospital, all that sort of thing, we didn't think about the relationship between our actions and the cost of the consequences. We didn't think about it. And we never have thought about it, and so now insurance is $250 a month, not $25 a month, because we've used up so much. So, again, it's living within your means. I came back from Washington one day, and I was bragging about what we had done. It was a couple of years ago. I was down in Rochester bragging about what we had done on the budget or something like that. I guess that's when we did the Graham-Rudman-Hollings or something like that. And I was excoriating the fact we haven't gotten rid of the deficit and so forth. And he said, well, some old farmer was in the audience, and he said, oh, I know, I was back there with the flood control bill. That was it. And I was also talking about the deficit at the same time. And he put the connection between the two of them. He says, here you are back in Rochester bragging about bringing $60 million of federal money into Rochester for the flood control project. Did it ever occur to you, Senator, ever occur to you that before the first flood in Rochester, or before the first flood in Rochester, came Apache Mall and all kinds of urban development and sidewalks and streets and asphalt and all that sort of thing? He said, Senator, it's all about stewardship. Oh, gee, I could spend a fair amount of time here today talking to you about resources. I could tell you this is a great state. We got all kinds of resources, and it's a wonderful thing you're doing, preserving these resources, using them for education, using them for recreation. I could thank you and so forth. But you'd expect that of anybody who was a kind of a dedicatory speaker at an event like that. So I want to reach somewhat beyond that to your responsibility and my shared responsibility to get us back to the basic values that my parents taught me, and then they set me up not to follow. Live within your means and take responsibility for your action. Now, if I get free health insurance when my employer, I'm not taught to take responsibility for my action. If I'm able to buy my first house for nothing down and forever to pay and all of the interest is deductible, I'm not going to take responsibility for my action. You know what my actions are? I took the average price of housing in America from $5,000 to $101,600. And those 4 sons, as they graduate from college, are all coming home to live with me. And I know they don't love me. I don't think, I'm sure they do, but they don't act like they do sometimes. So I think they're back there because they can't afford their own housing. So I ask you to reach back and just examine our mutual responsibility for restoring our values. You're restoring the land. You're restoring a whole lot of things here. You're making pleasurable experiences for a lot of people. You're making people out of just ordinary men and women here at this place. But I ask you on this occasion to take on another dimension, which is those old values, and to think about what role you and I as people, not as politicians and business people and teachers and so forth, play, but just as people in getting us back to those old values. And we'll carry on the fight to balance the budget, and we'll carry on the fight to get air toxics out of the air and toxic carcinogens out of the groundwater. We'll carry on those fights. But every time we do, somebody's going to say it's going to cost money. Cost money. Dave Stockman, when I costed out my acid rain bill 5 years ago, and Dave Stockman was still around, it costed out over 10 years at $40 billion. And I have an emissions tax bill. See, I tax pollution. And if you don't want to pay the tax, you don't pollute. If you can't afford not to pay the tax, you go ahead and pollute, and we take the money and reinvest it in pollution control. He says $40 billion we can't afford. He says that's $4,000 per fish. See, that's the way he demeaned what I was trying to do, $4,000 per fish. Well, he's on Wall Street now, probably eating $4,000 fish for all I know. But that's the current reaction. See, we got this budget deficit, so we can't spend money. Sorry, no more money for LawCon. We're still pumping up the public oil reserves. We're still selling off the grazing lands. Where's that going? That's going in part to satisfy today's appetites, not my children's needs. And that gets me to the end of these comments, which is all about generational equity, and it is all about my 4 sons, which happen to be the 4 greatest events in my life. But I am about to be the first part of the first generation to leave its children less well off than it was left by its parents. And that's burdensome to me. It is burdensome. I am not kidding you. My children cannot afford housing. While I sit on my $300,000-$400,000 worth of housing, which started with a little $10,000 home in South St. Paul, and over 27 years, it just rolled through inflation. I'm sitting on all of that. But they aren't going to have it. By the time my oldest son retires, the Social Security payroll tax is going to have to be 31.2%. The payroll tax is going to have to be 31.2% on everybody workers in this country to support his retirement. Well, it's not going to happen. We can't do that. But that's the way we've set it up. Cost out acid rain, cost out groundwater pollution, cost out all of these things. Cost out smoking and drinking and no seatbelts and no helmets and all the rest of these sort of things. Cost them out at $500 a day in a hospital. Cost them out at, $140,000 for certain kinds of transplants. Got a whole society now talking about quality of life. Talking about pulling the plug on old people and asking the folks to write living wills so I can get my plug pulled as soon as it doesn't look good. On the theory, that we are a nation and a people of limited resources. We are not a nation of limited resources. We've just wasted so much of the valuable resources, human and otherwise, with the notion that I don't have to live within my means, and I do not have to take responsibility for my actions. But this hasn't been here forever. My folks didn't do this. They taught me those two values. So I know better. It's just that for 25, 30 years, whatever it is, that isn't the way it's been. So, is it easy to go back? Is it easy to change things? Can we go back? Can we capture that again? Of course we can. As long as we understand we're all in it together. It isn't just the politicians. I know you want Boschwitz and Dernberger to balance the budget, but you sent two guys who've never balanced their own budgets to Washington. You want them. I mean, can our generation balance the national budget if it can't balance its own? Really, can it? Not unless it makes a lot of these speeches and gets committed to some kind of a change. Not in our values, but in the way we apply those values. Ultimately, there are a lot of good things at stake besides having more money for resources like this, besides having healthier people, so forth. There's a lot more at stake than that. America is a nation that's getting much older. Its children are much less well educated than they need to be. Half of the children born today, if things go on the way they are, will live in poverty. 1/2 in the United States of America will live in poverty. 20% today are illiterate. You know, gosh, what a great society we are, and yet, that sort of thing. And it's going to get worse unless we recognize that we are not a nation of limited resources. It's just that the abuse that all of us engages in our own little piece of this world of existing resources, starting with ourselves, has got to end over some period of time. And that it is our own responsibilities, not just the government's responsibility, to do something about it. Government can help in lots of ways. You use the government. That's what it's there for. But you can't expect the government to do it all. All the Republican senators went down to Williamsburg last week, and we all got together. We've been depressed for 6 months since we lost those elections. We're out of the majority. We've really been in a funk. So we all went down to Williamsburg, or most of us went down. We got all revved up, came back, and now we're all excited. But one of the things we learned down there in a political sense was that the American people still expect government to solve most of the serious problems in this country. But they don't want taxes raised. So what's the message there? I mean, if it's AIDS, are you worried about AIDS? Of course you should be. Government ought to do something about it. Drugs, the government ought to do something about it. You name the problem, and the government ought to do something about it. Senator, what are you doing about this problem and that problem? But raise my taxes? No. So what does that say? Looked at from the standpoint of a lot of people, it says, I want someone to solve this problem. I do not see it as a shared problem. I think AIDS is a problem for people with certain kinds of sexual or addictive behaviors, not me. I see drug dependency, even though I have a snort or two every night, you know, and I seem to always want it. I see drug dependency as something that's somebody else's problem. It's not mine. If any of you saw this fantastic Bill Moyers special about 1.5 years ago on CBS, it was a 2-hour special. The first 1.5 hours was all about young black kids in a ghetto in Newark, New Jersey. And for 1.5 hours, these kids are these are all 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, all bopping around with their boxes. You know? They're talking about playing mommy and daddy for 1.5 hours. You know, like, it's fun, you know, but there's no responsibility. In the last half hour, 5 of the nation's most recognized black leaders sat and talked about what we just seen. And the interesting thing to me, and I cried, was that not a one of them blamed Ronald Reagan for what we saw. Not a one of them blamed Republicans or Democrats. Not a one of them blamed politicians in general. They all agreed it could have been whites in Chicago or Minneapolis, as well as blacks in Newark. They said this is a generational problem. It's a slippage in our sense of values. Those kids have not learned a sense of self-responsibility. I remember that well because the next day I was supposed to talk to the National Education Association. It was the first time I've ever been invited to talk to them since I'm for, I don't know, choice or something in education. They don't like that. But anyway, I remember sitting at Mass that morning writing out my speech, and I got there like today, and I threw away my regular speech, and I talked about what I had seen the night before, and I hope in a sense I talked about it the way I do it to you here today. I couldn't think of a better group to share this message with because most of you have come a long way. There isn't anybody from this place, or very few people in this room who come from right here. So you've all come from somewhere else to celebrate something special about this place. And I hope that you go away from here today continuing that celebration and wanting to carry the message of this place to a lot of other people and get a lot more people involved as you go along. But I hope as you do that, you will also take the unique thing about this, which is its generational values. This place is not here for the folks my age or Georgia or anybody else's. It's here for these kids and the kids they're going to have and the kids they're going to have. That's why we do this. And I look in this audience and I can see people who have taught me that. That's why those of us who are into conservation of natural resources are into that business. And so maybe today I've added a little extra dimension to what it is that brought you here anyway. And at least I hope that I have, and I want to say I enjoy very much the opportunity to be your senator, and I enjoy particularly the opportunity to come back here. And I may make a joke from time to time about Gordy twisting my arm and all that sort of thing, but as I keep coming back here and this place keeps getting better and better all the time, I really do find it difficult to say that this hasn't been one of the most pleasant experiences in my life, because it has, and I thank you for it very much.
George Brandt was speaking, and he was going to talk about some recognition that he was going to give. And I was going to have the opportunity to introduce him, and I'm going to take that opportunity at this time. And I understand it's putting the preface before the chapter, but I think that you ought to know that George Brandt has been a significant factor in our Deep Portage Conservation Foundation from the beginning, really. And he has been in this area on 10 Mile Lake for a long time. Actually, George, it's been in excess of 50 years, hasn't it?
64.
64 years. You know, I have a 4-year-old, and to him, knowing that 4-year-old as I do, he would think that George came in here right after the glacier left. I would explain to my 4-year-old that is not true, that George let the hole for 10 Mile Lake fill up with water, and then he came in. But he has shown a commitment, as you all have shown, to this area and to this institution. He's a retired chemical engineer, and he has been trained to think logically and trained to solve problems, trained to look at things in a rational and logical way. And I think that, George, if you have permitted the interruption, I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to do it. I'm going to let you continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Profound words from the senator, not for me to summarize, but to be impressed by. Words for us to ponder and keep with us. He's been a friend of Deep Portage when this was a dream of Vern Neese and Fay Harrington and I hesitate to name names because I'm going to miss some, and certainly Gordy Michelson. But the senator has been here when this concept was first growing. And it's a real pleasure, isn't it, Vern, to see him come back and champion the things that you people created a long time ago, and it's still growing. We were talking about its growth and the contribution, and it was my pleasure to tell you about Arlene and Mike, and I will pick up about where I left off. I want to tell you just a little bit about some of the memberships and professional affiliations that Mike brings to Deep Portage, and the intelligence and the experience that comes with that type of person. And I will do this by excerpting about 10% of his accomplishments. And let me just read at random for a moment. Director, Research and Development, Minnesota Environmental Sciences Foundation. A graduate research assistant at the University of Northern Iowa. His affiliations are that continue are with the Minnesota Academy of Science, the Minnesota Association of Outdoor Environmental Educators, Minnesota Natural Scientists. Applications, I gave you his senior thesis. I'm going to touch just a skip here without prearrangement. Courtyard Gleanings from the Real World, published in the Minnesota Educational Journal. Landscape for Learning, Minnesota Horticulturist Journal. Emerging Environmental Management Curricula in Minnesota, in the Journal of Environmental Education. The first, I believe, the first Distinguished Service Award from the Minnesota Academy of Science in 1975. So he has now 12 years of enrichment and contributing that type of capability to what all of us here are so interested in. She had a Bachelor of Science degree from Mankato State College, and she has, I know, enough master degree credits, plus 20, to have a master's degree from the University of Minnesota. And I hope someday, when the workload gets a little bit less here, she will get the documentation of what she's already accomplished. She has been a consultant to the state of Minnesota Acid Rain Commission, and she has been a coordinator for the certification of teachers and curricula for the recently enacted environmental education law. Arlene works here actually as an employee of the Deep Portage Foundation, something we feel very good about on the foundation. If Mike is the CEO here, Arlene is the Chief Operating Officer here. The daily duties fall heavily on her, and she's very capable to the challenge. I can't tell you the number of times that she has pitched in something that wasn't initially her responsibility. Once when it was mine, to do a certain job at the spring rally in Minneapolis, open and unwrap a gift from the foundation directors and the foundation executive committee that will make it crystal clear how much we think of you and your professionalism and your giving, and you're giving the heartbeat to Deep Portage. Arlene, you want to open that? And
Now, Arlene will take forever to do this because she recycles paper. And while she's getting into that, George, actually it was high school. We were voted the cutest couple in high school. We were friends for 7 years before I said yes to her when she proposed.
well, I knew it was early in your life, Mike, and for those of you who haven't had a chance to see this couple work together, to know that they knew each other in high school and now as grandparents be the closest of friends. It's very special. pass on their thanks to you, all of you, and to the foundation board for the support that we have hopefully given them, and all of you who have contributed so much. I then give the microphone back to Ted.
Thanks a lot. I can tell you that before this, the group home in Pine River, and in Pine River we're having Summerfest. And Summerfest is also an event that has a parade. And our next speaker was going to be in that parade. All politicians are sensitive about letters to the editor. They must be, because you notice on that same page there generally is another letter from a politician talking back to us. But this particular letter to the editor went on to defend Kinkle and explain that he was doing a good job and that he did have the interests of this particular group at heart, and that there wasn't any reason for him to be maliciously and ungrounded attack on his person and so on and so forth, which was fine, except that there were two paragraphs at the end. One paragraph was to explain and the other paragraph was to apologize. And I found that interesting because in the next paragraph the writer of the letter explained that he was a member of the Republican Party, and he had to explain that because in the last paragraph he apologized because he voted for Kinkle. And that's pretty serious stuff. The feelings of politicians and political alliances run fairly deep in this county, and wait! Now I'm going to do an introduction. Go on back and sit down for a minute. Here's a guy that's just shaking the dust out of his coat. Come on up here, Tony. Tony, I finished telling this audience a story that I wanted.
Thank you, Ted. I apologize for being just a little late. Pine River had its Summerfest parade today, and I was obligated to be there, and I couldn't be the first one in line because they had Ron Stark, who you may remember is best punter in the NFL right now. He's a Pine River boy, so they gave him first slot and they put me second. So I was just a little late, but I'm really delighted to be here. Members of the Deep Portage Committee and friends and visitors. In fact, on my way in, I saw 4 or 5 cars coming out, and each of them had a different license plate from a different state. I think that says a lot about Deep Portage. I've been asked today to represent the Minnesota legislature at your celebration, and so on behalf of myself, Senator Willett, Senate Majority Leader Roger Moe, Speaker of the House Bob Vanasek, and Governor Portage, we all join you in your commitment to Deep Portage in this celebration. I can't help but wonder what my grandfather would have thought if he had lived to see this. About 30 miles through the woods here on Broadwater Bay in Longville, Woman Lake, my grandfather homesteaded. He was a poor German immigrant. He was a barber. And he came to the area where the lumberjacks were, figuring he'd get more business. And he saw what Weyerhaeuser did to the land, big loggers. Saw what J.B. Walker and his crew did when they clear-cut the land. He saw parts of our Cass County destroyed. I don't think he ever dreamed that people like you in the 1980s would be fighting back. You're out to protect the land. And you know, there are other parts of Minnesota fighting back. Example of that, this week we were in special session. And we fought those stock market raiders, those, I guess we call them financial pirates, who threatened Dayton Hudson. You may have read about that in the paper. A good corporate citizen of Minnesota. The Minnesota business needed our help, and we were there. Small businesses, many of whom depend on Deep Portage to draw tourists, will benefit from our new small business property tax credit, the Greater Minnesota Corporation, and our lower income tax rates. Those people needed our help, and we were there. But most importantly, when our land needed to be saved, when nature needed to be preserved, when northern Minnesota needed your help, you were there. And so we recognize here at Deep Portage that this day does not belong to Senator Dernberger and Tony Kinkle or the politicians, does not belong to the businesses who will benefit, belongs to those people whose neighbors used to laugh at them for this dream, and I know they did. Belongs to those of you that could never get your local officials to ever listen to Deep Portage. Belongs to those of you who tried to convince the business community that this would work. Belongs to you, and today you've shared it with the rest of us. And so on behalf of the citizens of the district that I represent, on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota, of the districts that my colleagues represent, we just want to say thank you for your work, and God bless you. Thank you.
If you check your program, the rest of the continued activities are going on, and will continue from this point on. Thank you.
Now let me point out some of the people assistant. She's also spends a good part of the time working on the foundation, and just a real terrific resource for us. Betty Green, I saw you back there. She's still there. She's here. She's out working with me. Betty Green and the Friends have been just a fabulous resource for all of us, and I'd like any member of the Friends, all members of the Friends, to please stand. Here's Betty. 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 I tried to say some nice things about you when you weren't here.
Well, I was busy.
All right. Would all the members of the Friends?
Will you introduce the Friends, Betty Allis?
Well, the ones that I see, Walt and Joanne King, Faye Harrington's a member of Friends, and I think everyone on the foundation are a member of Friends, but they will be introduced later. Dale Holden's a member of Friends. The Knoblochs are members of Friends, Bess and Hap, and let's see, who else? Mike and Arlene, they're members of Friends. And I don't know whether the other people are or not. Some of them I don't know, but they are from the foundation, quite a few of them.
They've been a tremendous resource in keeping everything going out here and making it interesting for visitors who just show up in all of us. Another one that we need to recognize is Al Hardy. Al's been the construction manager, and he's got this thing done on time, in budget. And it's a terrific accomplishment. Is Bill McGuire still here, or Mike? Is he gone? He was here yesterday, I know. But I think the McGuire firm of architects, the design is really have a big part to play, and they've been very, very helpful all the way through.
Bob. At one time, I think many people thought it would be impossible to get money raised and get it in sufficient quantities to build this building. But we had the help of many people, and we've had very good cooperation. I'd like to report that we've raised $1.6 million. Now, of that, we've got a lot of things yet to be done, and all of these chairs and tables and things that you're sitting on are all borrowed or rented. We need another $100,000 to complete this particular phase of the building. Now, in addition to do this, we have the other side, or phase 2, and we need another $750,000. Now, I'd like to call to your attention at this time that the architect made an estimate of how much it's going to cost to build this building. And I'm very pleased to report that we're at almost $200,000 under the architect's estimate. And that is primarily due to Al Harding. I'd like to we have a shopping list, and I hope that if the people come and visit with us, see what we need, and I hope that we can be successful. Now, getting back to fundraising, I know that we're going to get all the money that we need, and I'm very confident. It may be a little slow, but we had a few leads, and we're working hard. There's no doubt about it, we're going to get that money. Now, in so doing, we're working with the county and with the friends and everybody, and it's a real mix. But we're all working together for one cause, and I say we will be successful. And next time I'm here, I hope to be able to report that we have it all in hand.
There's one person in the room that's been instrumental in that fundraising, and that's Chuck Eastler, Professional Fundraising Services of Minneapolis, St. Paul. I have Chuck to stand. He's invaluable in helping us make contacts and prepare the way and going to some of these big foundations. We just got a pledge of $10,000 just the other day from one, so see it's coming. Now I'd like to turn the podium over to Bill again for special recognition.
Yes,
statement like this from them is most meaningful. They've only one other, and that came from War II, or Buddy shared. It is touching, and I do have a heart. It's not just printer's ink and blood. I hope that you understand that I mean most sincerely that I accept this because I've become a symbol. And that's fine. I've been the cheerleader, the rest. I've been the abrasive son of something or other, you know. I've been the friend, I hope, sometimes, and the confidant of many. But I've assumed that role happily because all of us together share something, and I accept this in that spirit, that this is a tribute to the people who believe in something very big and very important. I want to repeat the sermon, the 2 billion-year-old rocks, and 2 billion years yet to come. But while we are here and given domain, we have a deep responsibility. And together, we're trying to help others understand this relationship of us as people with nature. I think it is so very appropriate that this is called Resources Heritage Center. We recognize we didn't create, we inherited, and we are trustees, and we should pass on. And I'm delighted that the way things worked out, that the heritage that we emphasize symbolically this weekend is with the Ojibwe people, the first to use these resources. And I tell you, from most intimate contact with them, they are delighted with the non-Indian people of Portage. That's what we are. Delighted. I will tell you, they have dipped into the tribal treasury with dollars, and that they have given hours of service. And I hope somehow we can show our appreciation. This Sunday they are giving a wild game and fish dinner as a thank you and appreciation for our understanding in this concept. To them, there's a bit of religion. I hope when you see dances, you'll recognize these are not entertainment ceremonies. They are devoting themselves. They asked Gordy, can you make some money out of it? I said, I don't know. They expect me to hustle. Charge for it. We're happy to give it. Charge for it and get some money. Or we can't. We've worked it out. You are contributing. It's only $10. It's $25, $125 when they do it in the city for selected people. It is their gift to the foundation that we have to merchandise. I hope we show that appreciation. They've done many little things that are very important. And I labor the point only to say that as people, we have inherited something, and we have shared in it. And I accept this tribute. It's very meaningful to me. Because it says that all of us together believe some of these things. And we're willing to put our money on the line. We'll go without fishing trips in Canada. We'll cancel vacation. We'll do all kinds of things. Short of lying and cheating. Well, I've stolen. Interesting enough, I called my secretary. I don't have one out there retired. And I said, Elna, would you help me? I want something to look pretty. I'm hustling a guy. But it's private business for deep Portage. Would you mind cheating on the company? She's now secretary of the chairman of the board. I trained them well. And I said, would you mind cheating on the company a little bit to type some letters? Well, it never used to bother me, Gordy. That spirit is all over. And sometime I'm going to be able to point to persons, this is not the occasion, who have given most generously, as Bob said, professional and technical service. You can't believe it. Who have given things you couldn't possibly buy, professional consultancy and labor, nights at their own expense, wiring the building, all kinds of things. The whole list of it. It's in that spirit that this certificate of merit to me means so much, because gratitude of dedicated service, I think I'm symbolic of hundreds who have dedicated themselves to service. It's in that spirit that I'm very, very pleased that this is symbolic, that people share a dream, and it's going to go. Bill, will raise the money because you're going to give. And I've been asked to make one last hustle. I'm going to wait for more people here this afternoon. What is available? Hold it up, would you, Ruth? Don't be embarrassed. It just came a few minutes ago. A copy of the master plan for Deep Portage in writing. Is that finally a dream was put on paper back in 1975. There were only 100 copies printed. That's the only one that's clean and safe. They're almost worn out. They're all over the United States of the model. They've asked me to auction it off. Well, it cost a $50,000 grant from Upper Great Lakes to do it. We spent only $49,000 back then. And I think that money should be replaced by bidding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Motion